Welcome to DABCC Radio,
where smart people listen.
Virtualization and Cloud Talk,
Featuring cutting-edge solutions from the hottest companies around the globe.
broadcasting from the DABCC offices in sunny Sarasota, Florida.
Surrounded by computers, books, and Legos. Your host, Douglas Brown.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of DABCC Radio. I have a fabulous show for you today. I have Cláudio Rodrigues with us, and Cláudio is a phenomenal guy. He's an engineer, but he's also a developer. He's a business guy. I mean, he's done it all, really, to be honest with you. He built the first load balancer for RDP way back when, a long time ago. And he built a complete solution that competed with Citrix way back when. Basically one of the first solutions that did that outside of Microsoft itself, right? And wow, he's just a great guy. And if you follow him on Twitter, if you've ever been to an E2E or a pub forum or anywhere he's ever spoke, you know that he has a very firm opinions on things, and he's not shy to share them, which is really great. It's refreshing to hear somebody actually speak the truth. He won't tell you what you want to hear. He'll tell you what he believes, and this is to be respected in many, many ways, and it can also upset people, so I'll address that with him. I'll ask him, what do you think of what goes on here, and he's just a fabulous guy. So I've been wanting to bring him on the podcast for many, many years now, and we just never made it happen. So finally we did it. What do I say? I'm excited to share this with you. So with no further ado, I'll just shut up and let's get to the interview, because Cláudio is phenomenal and I'm not. I'm just sitting here rambling, and let's get to Cláudio. So with no further ado, here's my interview with Cláudio from Cláudio, the guy, the number one. Cláudio Rodrigues. Okay, Cláudio, thank you so much for doing this with me. We've been trying to do something like this for a long time, and we never really, which is probably totally my fault, but we never did it. So I'm really looking forward to this. We have really no agenda. Let's just see what we talk about. Sound good?
Yeah, sounds great.
So for those who don't know you, who is Cláudio? What do you do? You have a great past. I mean, you've been doing this a long time, and you built neat stuff. So can you give us a little bit about your history?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I started on IT back in 91, so 30 years now. And specifically on the, end user computer, whatever it's called today, that was just called, Citrix, as you know, like 25 to 30 years ago. I started doing Citrix because for a while I was one of the first technical support engineers for Compaq, if you remember.
Yeah.
Compaq that HP later acquired. And I was in charge of supporting all the weird OSs back in the day. It was, my cup of tea. So like Banyan Vines and Novell was kind of a well-known widespread one. But I was doing Banyan Vines and then Novell, and then when NT came, out doing NT. So all these weird things, OS2, they would fall into my plate. And that's when I got, hold of the Citrix stuff that was OS2 based. And that's how it started with Citrix. Then I started doing the WinFrame and all that stuff, mainly as a consultant. That was the bottom line. And what that created for me, it was after a couple years doing that as a consultant, as I said, I realized, people are using this Citrix thing, and I'm noticing something. Some customers buy it for whatever feature, and then other customers buy it for the other, feature set, and they were paying for all these things as now we have the different licensing, whatever they're called, like enterprise, premium, whatever name Citrix is using these days. But back in the day, it was like, okay, you pay the license. But as I said, people were using like subsets of what they were paying for. And that's when I realized, well, there is a market here if we split whatever these technologies are into like little modules, and we just sell little pieces of this. So that's when I started the terminal services.net company back in 2001. And we were the first ones that looked at Citrix and decided, okay, let's create something that offers some of the functionality. Because again, as a consultant, I realized it pretty quickly that people were buying and were always using like, 20, 30% of the features. It's like you running, Word and Excel, like me, probably.
Sure.
Even
sure.
PowerPoint, for God's sake. Like
Yeah,
PowerPoint,
I use like 1% a word. Spell
Oh,
checker,
yeah.
grammar checker. That's about it, right? Bold,
Exactly.
underlined.
That's all I do. Insert a page break and
Sure.
done. And it was the same thing. It's probably to this day the same thing with all these products. Citrix, VMware, whatever it is. And then I'm like, okay, well, let me create these modules, these things where I don't give all the features because I don't even have the manpower to create all the features, but I can create the bare bones, features that I know people are running because I was the consultant talking to customers on a daily basis. And that's how the products started. The first RDP load balancer that was resource based. And then we created a portal, you could publish the applications with a seamless Windows shell and all that stuff. So we created a Citrix Lite, and it did well to the point that at one stage in 2005, 2X, the Maltese company, acquired us. And I stayed at 2X for a while. Always as I said, always in the EUC. We had profile applications like people today, they talk about profiles, profile management. We had that in 2004. We released it like probably one of the first profile-based products, like only for profiles. And, 2X became Parallels. I spent years at Parallels as the advisor to the CEO. And then Parallels was acquired by Corel. The Corel that people know from Corel Draw. It's insane. So I have a history of not only deploying what I still do to this day, all the technologies. Like right now, I'm in a project, Horizon to WVD migration. So I still have the hands-on experience, but I work on the other side of the table, as the developer, as the developing company, as the business guy establishing, sales channels and partnerships, as a PM. So I did a bit of everything in this industry.
That's very interesting, and it's really neat. I've always said one of the things that made me sort of more well-rounded is the fact that I got to see a lot, right? I was never a customer, but I was outsourced to a customer as a consultant or as a, working for an integrator. But when you work for the different angles, like the customers, the partners, the vendor, then you get to see why everyone does what they do and understand a little bit better. I've never been, I guess I wrote some code, I wrote that printer app way back when, but I'm not nothing like you, of course. And it definitely makes you understand what we do or what they do, I guess, a lot better than, let's say, the typical guy that clicks next, finish. No insulting them, of course. It's the opportunity. You had that opportunity. So very cool. Now you mentioned this, the market for the modules. Nowadays, if you look at something like a Citrix, it's so verbose, right? Because there's so many years of it. Do you still see value to something like that? And if so, are there solutions out there that are, quality?
Well, definitely.
And if I can add, and if those solutions are quality, are they too big? Is there still a market for what you built many years ago?
I would say that there is a market, and the reason for that, just looking at some of the customers that we deal on a daily basis, like me and Christian, Christian Griffin, the RDS MVP,
Sure.
that is part of the RDS Gurus with me and Freek Burson, that is another MVP, and Benny, Benny.
Yeah, of course, of course.
So, all these guys, they are part of RDS Gurus. So at RDS Gurus, it's funny because people come to us with RDS, problems or RDS needs. But the first thing we tell them, and that's another point, as we are not tied to a particular product in terms of I don't have to sell anything. So for us, the really important thing is, what is your problem? And how can we solve it? So looking at that, in many cases, we see customers like one that we are actually doing right now, where they came with, okay, we need an RDS, blah, 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 environment and like this. And we were like, looking at each other and we were like, okay, it sounds like these guys are a perfect candidate for something like Parallels. So there is a market for these much smaller that only deal with a subset of the features, compared to something like Citrix that is really big. So the proof is, again, products like Parallels or ACOPS. ACOPS is another product that you talk about, and most people don't even know. So there is a ton of history behind, something like ACOPS that people are not even aware of. And like Parallels and ACOPS, there are other products on the market that, could do something for you or give you the same functionality for the feature subsets that you are actually using.
Interesting. And do you think, one thing you said is that, you're a consultant, you don't sell products, so you can be a lot more free to pick and choose products, right? And you have been very outspoken over the years about, sharing your opinions on things, which is quite interesting. And it's really great and refreshing to hear, because you always say, you tell the truth as you know it, right? As you believe it, of course. But it's also gotten you in trouble, right? And some people don't want to hear the truth, right? Or they don't like to hear the truth, or what have you, or they don't agree that it's the truth, right? That can definitely be argued. How do you feel that, what do you have to say about that? You and I've had a lot of conversations about this, and what do you think? What do you think about that? Does that make sense? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, it does. Well, the first thing is, in terms of being a consultant, okay, I find it critical for us in terms of a learning experience and how it's gonna shape you, as a consultant, that you get exposed to as much as you can products wise. And I understand there are people working for like, a Citrix partner, and they are doing like Citrix deployments all day long, or VMware partners, doing VMware deployments all day long. And now that Microsoft created this WVD, whatever certification stuff, now they are doing WVD. But again, the reality is, if you want to offer the best and be able to look at something and understand all the differences and understand how you can better tackle the problems, the needs of your customers, you need to know more than a single platform. And when you are doing that as a single platform, like working for these, one vendor partners, I see that as a problem, because you are too entrenched into selling that technology. You know what I mean? Like you can't really, as a Citrix partner, you can't really question the customer or ask the customer if they should be doing something differently, because you already go to the customer with a set agenda. And in many cases, it's a set agenda that was put forward by sales. So they sold that. And then you get there, I don't want to use that terminology, but it's not really a fanboy, but it's that person that only knows the technology. They think it's right. Or they don't even question if it's right. What is even worse? in my mind. If you don't question anything, like, man, that's horrible. So they go into the customer and then they're like, okay, this is the way to do it. And reality is there could be many ways, and more than that, many better ways. So I see that as certainly a problem. In my case, of course, when you say certain things about certain products, people don't like it. That's the bottom line. They don't want to hear it. I understand that sometimes there are several ways of saying something, but people don't know the background, story, right? For something, for example. One thing is like RDS or the RDS team, that people usually give me a hard time because they think I give them a hard time. But if you look at the history, like, I have been dealing as an MVP with these people, and many probably still there since 2001. It's 20 years now. So one thing is you get a new MVP that he started last year, and he's like saying something to Microsoft, you should do this in a different way or better. Okay, and if they take that feedback or not in the following year, you are like, oh, okay, they are busy or there are more pressing issues. But after you give feedback on something for 15 years and you still see the same crap being done, you know what I mean? You get frustrated, certainly. And then they take it personal. Like, oh, this is personal. They are, Cláudio is attacking us. And that's far from the truth. It's just like, man, you have a tracking, there is a history here, a record of you not doing the right thing. And we're not talking about something new that you had, a year to do it. We're talking about stuff that has been around since early 2000s. So you had 20 years. What is the excuse? You don't have resources after 20 years? You didn't understand how to do it after 20 years? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I follow you. Do you think that maybe the way some people say it or is the wrong way to say it? Or do you think that some people just don't like hearing it at all, no matter what? Obviously constructive, and the other thing I feel is that, yes, there are fanboys, and that's not a bad term, in my opinion. It becomes a religion, for the lack of a better term, when somebody sells, let's say, Citrix or Microsoft or VMware, any product. Let's just call it, Doug's cool product number one, right? And their entire company is based on that. Their integrator, their jobs, their 50 employees, then that becomes very important for them. And then when someone comes around and says, hey, this isn't this, and, this is better, or they don't know what they're doing, or they've done it all wrong, that's slapping them in the face their potential livelihood. And I think that they do get mad about that, right? And whether that's right or wrong, it's the way it is, correct?
Yeah, exactly. In my view, listen, if you come to me, and as an example, I like cars, right?
Yeah.
If you come to me and you tell me, okay, this is, you can come and look at my car, for example, you open the engine bay and you can say, Cláudio, I think it's, it's not that clean, your engine bay. Or you can tell me, Cláudio, man, this looks like shit, it's terrible, looks dirty. The bottom line is, the reality is, the engine bay is not clean, period. Doesn't matter how you relay the message to me. What you were trying to say, regardless, was it's not clean. So you were not saying anything that is not the truth. So when I talk about certain products or whatever things in the industry, regardless of how it's said, there is a truth behind it. And if you are a smart vendor, you would filter, you would forget, okay, let's forget how it's being said. There is a problem here. He's pointing out that there is an issue.
I definitely understand.
You filter whatever you think it's crap, or you filter how the message was relayed, And in no way I go and offend people directly or do name calling or anything like that. I don't do that. I'm just honest about a particular product, topic, whatever it is.
Yeah.
There is no
Sometimes
name calling.
Yeah, sometimes I think, and this is not unique to to our world. It's unique to anyone that takes some criticism. Is that it's they use the way it was delivered, or some piece of it to say this is not valid, instead of taking a deep look and saying maybe this is valid, and maybe it's not too. I'm not saying, I don't always agree with you, Claudio. There's sometimes I totally agree with you. But it's a very interesting thing. So let's move on from this and let's start getting some of your opinions, right? So what I want to do is just go through some technology areas. Citrix, Microsoft, VMware, those guys have changed so much over the years. Have some neat stuff going on. Clouds coming, DAS. You mentioned WVD. So let's start off with you mentioned RDP a few times, right? We had Dennis on the show, actually not on the pod. Yeah, we had Dennis on the podcast too, not long ago, and he was talking all about RDP, and of course, if you talk to Benny, he will tell you RDP is as good as anything out there, right? So what do you think about Microsoft today? What do you think about WVD? What's the good, the bad, and the ugly?
First of all, WVD, I see again as another tool on my toolbox. So if you have a particular problem and I can see that particular tool can solve it, well, that's great. But like anything else, it's like you have a remodeling that you want to do, for example, on your deck. And you come to the contractor or to a bunch of contractors and you are very clear, listen, I have a hard limit on my budget. My budget is 20K to redo this deck. So it doesn't matter, if the deck that I'm proposing to put on your backyard will solve all your problems, but it costs 100K. It doesn't matter. So in many ways, people have to understand there will always be certain constraints that you have to work with. And budget is clearly one of them. And for some companies, it's actually the most important one. And in times like today, COVID and all that uncertainty that we see on the market for several things, no one can say anything today, right? Like we don't even know if we're going to be in business a year from now. We don't know exactly what the impact will be in the long term. So today you go to someone and say, oh, listen, but if you move to WVD to whatever, in the long term, you're going to be saving. Well, in the long term, I don't even know if I'm going to be here. It's like, as I always joke about, solar energy and my roof. I priced it at one point like a Tesla roof, whatever. It was like $60,000-$70,000 for my house. And then they are like, yeah, but you're going to be saving this much. So in 20, 30 years, it's going to be paid off, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, listen, I'm 50. In 30 years, there is probably a 95% chance that I'm dead.
I hope
so
not.
Are you telling me I'm gonna see money coming in after I'm dead? Like I don't care. So it's the same with these technologies. Like again, it may save you money down the road and save you money on whatever today, but the reality is you don't know what's gonna happen. So WVD, I think it's a good technology. I think it has a lot of things that have to be fixed, but in general, and I say that not looking at the technical side, I would say Microsoft in general, specifically with the RDS guys, most are disconnected from reality. And then their answer to whatever you ask, it's like, oh, go to user voice or let us know what do you think about this or what do you think about that. A couple examples. On-premises workloads. Why I can't run on-premises, workloads? And then Dennis and others, not not doing name calling here, but that's what it is available publicly. They are saying, well, then if you go outside of Azure, I can't monitor, I can do this, I can do that. Is that really important? Especially if I'm a company that already have an enterprise monitoring, already have an enterprise whatever solution. So I don't care about several things. I'm already covered on that. I just want to run my workloads here. So that's one example. And the last one with the short path, that's another good example. They released short path, and now they are saying that, they use cases for customers that have like an express route to Azure, so the end users can connect directly to the hosts, not passing through the gateway, and that will give them the best experience. I agree. I had that in 2003. It was called Direct Connect on the products, on WTS Gateway Pro. But the point is, they made suggestions like, you can run this with one external IP address per host. Seriously, that is even a suggestion? So it's these little things, like they have a disconnect in my mind with the real world. They think they are right, but the reality is there is a ton of customers that want exactly the opposite of what they are doing. And as I always joke, I don't understand these PMs. They create features and create all that stuff, and then you ask them, okay, go ahead and deploy this. I want to see you deploying the full stack, the solution that you are part of. And some don't even know how to start or how to do it. So how can you really create a much better product that is, in tune with what your customers need if you don't even know how to deploy your own product?
But don't you think there's a reason that they do what they do? I mean, isn't it driven by the market or driven by even a specific customer that, let's say, buys a lot of licenses, right? Of course, that's the way it works in many cases for some of these, these one-off type of features. But I don't think PMs just do things willy-nilly, right? That's not what you're saying, right?
What I'm saying is, whatever you do, you have to look at the bigger picture to understand everything from A to Z. And I don't mean understanding from a deep technical level. I mean understanding, okay, if I'm John Smith and I want to deploy this, what do I go through? What are my options? Why this feature is here? Sometimes you create a feature in a product that is, you only have visibility in that little piece. But that little piece may be thrown into the bigger picture in ways that are potentially terrible or potentially great. But now, if you are only looking at your feature and your feature works, but you are not seeing how that feature is actually integrated into the stack, maybe customers are looking at your feature just because someone didn't integrate it in the best way possible. They are looking at that and they are saying like, man, this sucks. And it's not because the end result of your feature sucks. It's because the way everything was cobbled together. Now, if you have an understanding of how everything was put together, you know what I mean? Then you see the bigger picture. You see like, okay, this that I created is actually great, but man, they're presenting it the wrong way or at the wrong place. This makes no sense. And now I understand the frustration that certain users, certain IT, people will have with this. That's something that I think it's lacking.
Can you give us any examples of things that that you disagree with, or maybe something that you love?
Well, one example that I disagree is the whole on-premises thing. As I posted on the blog and I got into a lot of shit from Microsoft, you can run the workloads on-prem from a technical standpoint. I'm not talking about legal and EULA and all that stuff. From a technical standpoint, I was running WVD loads on AWS, on Google, Google Cloud, on-prem here at my house. It works. And just looking at the market in general, look at Citrix. What Citrix did, migrated their infrastructure layer, broker, all that stuff to the Citrix cloud. And there you decide where you want to run your workloads. You run on-prem, fine. Cloud connector, boom, done. You want to run on AWS, fine. You want to run at Claudio's house, all good. Like Eric does, you know?
But
isn't just looking at all these things, like, there is a reason for that, right? Why is Citrix doing this? Why others are doing this? Are they idiots? Or there is actual use cases where people want to keep their workloads for now, especially when transitioning to the cloud. We are kind of in the middle of the whole thing, right? We, and by we, I mean you and I, we come from the on-prem world. We live in the on-prem world. And now there is the cloud. And there is a lot of people doing stuff in the cloud, but the reality is all these technologies that we worked with, there is a ton that still runs on-prem. And it's kind of, short-sighted or even stupid to think that someone is going to completely cut that on-prem world off today, and next week, on Monday, they're going to be in the cloud. There has to be a transition. If there has to be a transition, it means if I want to go to the cloud, even in a better marketing way to entice me to go to the cloud, I would love to be able to see my stuff handled by something in the cloud, like this brokering, this gateway, all that stuff. And then, you gave me that taste that, well, this works really cool. So now let me try something fully on the cloud. And then I'm like, oh, this is cool. And then I go ahead and at one point I shut down everything that I had on-prem. But putting these hard stops like this, no, you can't run anything, other than here. It's not good. It's something that I don't agree.
But isn't, I mean, obviously they're free to do anything they want, but
oh yeah,
that allow, I mean, okay, so Microsoft does this, but like you said, Citrix doesn't. Or in VMware, you can run them both on-prem and in the cloud, or, what have you. Doesn't that, the choice then is that you can choose, you don't have to go to Microsoft. Why not just go over to Citrix? And maybe Microsoft does that so that the competition still is out there living too, right?
Well, it's for the same reason why Microsoft improved RDP over the years. Why did they improve RDP over the years? If the answer could be, well, who cares? Go use, ICA and pay Citrix. Go use Blast or PC over IP and pay, VMware. But why they have improved the protocol? Because the reality is there is a ton of customers using the Microsoft stack. And as Microsoft customers, I would say they expect the flexibility. They expect a solid, platform. So this whole bullshit that it's like, oh, we are doing this to extend so others can extend, that's bullshit. But I understand that others
WVD,
can extend.
Can't WVD be on, on the cloud, and then the, RDS is still in the product, right? Be the on-prem? I mean, do they have to? I disagree with you there. I think that Microsoft says, okay, there's a line in the sand and we're going to finally put it there, right? Because one of the things people can definitely blame Microsoft for, and they did it for backwards compatibility, right? Was things always worked. Things were, well, as much as they can, right? But they were always tried to be backwards compatible. They can never just say, let's stop and start. Right. And so with WVD, boom, this is a cloud offering. We're going to be a cloud forward. And if you want to do on-prem, hey, there's all these third parties out there that do a great job, and you can use the RDS that's part of the Windows Server, right? Why do they owe it to us to have Windows XP in there, on the running locally?
No, listen. I understand part of the whole thing, but if you are starting to give me, for example, as a company, Microsoft in this case, people running on-prem, so let's take a look at an on-prem environment. Usually Microsoft customers are running what kind of email system? Microsoft's. It was either Exchange, hosted on-prem, or now it's Office 365, right? So now it's a cloud-based offering that most are running. Now, management, for example, I want to manage my endpoints. I can do Intune, to deploy stuff. I want to deploy new machines. I use Autopilot. All cloud offerings. Now, even my files, what is Microsoft doing on that space? You know the answer. OneDrive, right? So now this whole Office 365 stack that my users use is cloud-based. So if I can run my workloads for several reasons, like I may have stuff that is on-prem that I cannot, migrate as of now, but I want to still leverage, whatever tools that I know can be anywhere because there is no latency, there is nothing, there are no issues like my email, If I'm over 100 milliseconds latency or 500, well, who cares? My email is going to work pretty much the exact same way. So in that case, why can't I, until I get all my stuff sorted out and ready to be in the cloud, why am I forced to keep a whole RDS infrastructure, for example, on-prem, if I could simply leave almost everything that I have in the cloud, leave my workloads on-prem, and when I'm ready, I go and dump everything on-prem and go fully into the cloud. So it's just the flexibility during specifically a transition period, for example. And as I said, Microsoft improved the platform in many ways because their customers were using it, were asking for that. That's why RDP got better. So customers, don't you think there are customers asking for WVD on-prem?
Of course,
well,
of course.
You are well known on the community. I can bet if you post something, on Twitter, a poll, just asking, do you think it's great to have WVD brokering on-prem workloads? I can bet the vast majority will go for yes, we want to see it on-prem. So that tells you there is a need.
Yeah,
and if there is a need from Microsoft customers, what is Microsoft doing to address the needs of their customers?
I understand. I mean, you can make. I don't want to. We'll move forward, but you can make an argument that they have to pick and choose. So if they go and say, okay, let's do on-prem, that means they can't take one more step forward into the cloud. And I think Microsoft wants to be, WVD and Azure, to obviously be cloud first, forward. So we can argue whether or not that's right or wrong, but I think that's what they're doing. So
they wanted the money, right? The thing is the way they priced it, or they created the pricing infrastructure, the revenue infrastructure. As you know, if I go on Azure and I have my Microsoft, 365 E3.5 license, I can run my workloads on Azure first at a reduced rate. So if you compare the price of a Windows VM, a regular Windows VM, and a Windows VM that is being brokered by WVD, it's different. The ones brokered by WVD, you pay actually less. And for the brokering, you pay nothing, right? Because you are paying the Azure compute and storage and all that on top of what you are getting from your Microsoft 365 licenses. That's where the problem lies. Now, if I allow people to run stuff anywhere, well, I'm not getting the revenue for the compute because it's not running on my data center any longer. It's not on Azure. And on top of that, because of the way I priced this whole mess, now I'm not getting any money because the brokering layer, the gateway layer, all that stuff, I decided to throw it for free. And free, there is nothing free. I decided to tie that to the Azure workloads. So they were the ones that, shot themselves in the foot here. If it was priced like any other Azure service, I want to run, SQL on Azure. Well, there is a cost. There's a per hour cost, per whatever transaction cost. I don't know the details, but there is a cost. It's like doing Azure Files. There is a cost for the storage, a cost for whatever, for how much data I move. Well, if it was priced like that, yeah, you run on Azure, sure, we bill you nothing. You run anywhere else, you pay this much per user per month. Plus whatever, egress, data transfer, whatever it is. The money would be there the exact same way. But again, if you start with a bad decision, a bad, pricing model, pricing structure, well, you end up screwing yourself and your customers. And that's exactly what has happened here.
Makes sense. Well, let's move to Citrix. So, what do you, where do you think Citrix stands today? Right? I mean, there's a lot of changes over there. You have Citrix Cloud. What do you think about, where do you think Citrix stands today?
Well, Citrix today, I see less of that, and we both have been in this industry for quite a while, and more than that, quite involved with Citrix, right? As a company, as a business. So for a while in the past, and you saw that, they were on this shopping spree, buying everything that was shiny. So the bread and butter was like hosting applications and giving, access remotely. XenApp, in other words. And then when the whole VDI thing started, okay, Zen Desktop. But it was still hosting stuff, so people could run that remotely. So then Citrix goes and starts buying, Podio. Who uses that other than Citrix? I don't even know they use. I don't even think they.
Believe it or not, I just did a meetup with Chris Fleck last night, and or morning your time, night my time, and he brought up Podio. And, I told him, I said, there's two types of people. There's people that love Podio and people that don't love Podio. And the third kind would be people that don't know what Podio is. And he said that during COVID, they've actually sold more. I don't know about more than before, or than ever, but they saw a spike in Podio sales. And I know both sides, right? I know the people that thinks it's a foolish product, and I know other people that are actually. I have a good friend that owns an integrator, and he's on the technical side. And you say the word Podio to him, and he absolutely loves it because they've been able to build some workflows within their organization to do things they couldn't do before, right?
Oh, no, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's a bad product. That's far from it. What I'm saying is, if we look at the Citrix customer base, thousands and thousands of companies, millions of users using this, what is the percentage of Citrix customers using Podio? And more than that, when Chris says, there was an increase on sales, oh, sure. You were selling like $100 a month, and now you are selling, 10,000. Oh, it's percentage. It's amazing. We are doing, 1,000% more. Yeah, in terms of revenue, you were doing like 0.000%.
Yeah, I don't think Chris was that. I don't think that's his. I mean, I don't think he would play that game. But no, I see your point. But I mean, such a company like Citrix and Microsoft and any company, they need to expand too, right? And if Microsoft's going to start taking the cloud world, in Amazon, I mean, come on, wouldn't you agree that in 10 years or 15 years at let's say 15, that we're going to see a consolidation into the big three, the Google, Microsoft, Amazon? And where does that leave like Citrix? So but shouldn't they then nowadays look at VMware? VMware is so huge and they have so many products that some of the products I have no clue what they do, right? Because it's so diversified, right? And rightfully so.
Oh, I know. But the point is, they, like VMware, now that you touched on VMware, they have been acquiring companies, with a few exceptions, companies that were established with a ton of customers and with technologies that make sense, that we know that a lot of the VMware customers were either using it or will certainly use them after the acquisition. Now, little things like Podio, as I said, I don't know the numbers, but I can bet that it's tiny revenue and tiny amount of customers using it. That's just one example. And we're not even talking about the other stuff that was acquired and simply died. Octoblue being another example.
Octoblue, I liked Octoblue. Did you like the technology?
I like it. I
did
like
too.
the technology, certainly. What Citrix did with that? Nothing. It's dead, gone. And even other things that, I know some people say, no, that's not the case, but just look at the numbers. How many Citrix customers as of today still run Citrix hypervisor, Zen server?
This is an interesting subject because you and I have always classically, I can't think of the word, but disagreed on this. I think the Zen Source acquisition was a brilliant acquisition, and you absolutely despise it. Is that a fair statement?
No, wait.
No?
It's no, that's not. If you come to me and you tell me, Claudio, I just bought this Land Rover. If you just tell me that, I'll say, well, wait, there has to be more to this story. And then I'll ask you, okay, Doug, how much did you pay for your Land Rover? And let's say you wanted the Land Rover, the Defender 110. So you can go on trails in Germany. I don't even know if they have trails in Germany.
We have a lot of forests in Germany. The Black Forest, right? I don't know. I've never left Berlin. No, I have, but only by train. Yeah, the Bavarians. Come on, you have mountains down there. So yes.
Okay. So let's say you can take your Land Rover, 110 somewhere, in Germany and use the car. If you come to me and you say, listen, I paid $500,000 for that Land Rover, I'll tell you, listen, Doug, you are like in need of some assistance. And I mean, like,
this is where I disagree. It doesn't, to me, I mean, of course it matters how much money you spend. Of course that matters, right? You have to get a return on investment. But this is why I think it was brilliant. This is why I think it was brilliant. I think that if
for $500 million,
well, yeah, if you remember,
or Zen server,
if you remember,
you know how much money they were making as a business.
I understand this, but let's say they made $0. They never sold a single. Let's just, for hypothetically, they sold 0 copies of Zen server. Okay, back in 2000. Well, when did they acquire this? 2006, 2007, somewhere in that time frame. And at that time, virtualization was everywhere. If you read InfoWorld or Computer World or any magazine, any computer, any of the Gartners, any of these guys, what were they talking about? They were talking about virtualization. And Citrix was nowhere to be found. They tried to call themselves app virtualization, but they weren't, right? They were presentation virtualization, which is a great thing. We love this, right? And COVID proved that was a better way to compute, okay? But they wanted to be in that conversation, and rightfully so. So they go out and they spend $500 million on, let's say, just marketing. Now, personally, I think that they got more value than just marketing, but let's just say they didn't. Okay, just for the point of argument, that acquisition put them into that conversation. And that right there is, think about what companies spend the size of Citrix, the size of VMware, the size of market on marketing a year, right? $500 million is not, I mean, Microsoft spent what, like $1 billion on every Windows launch. Now Microsoft's bigger than Citrix, obviously, but still, I think it was money well spent, and they got a decent product out of it. Now we can argue whether or not they did everything they could to make the product the best it can be, right? We can argue whether or not it received its full potential. Okay, I give it that, but I don't think it was a bad acquisition. I think it was a brilliant acquisition. I really firmly do.
Given what they did with the product and the fact that, again, several customers experienced major issues and several left the Zen server, the hypervisor, train a long time ago, in my opinion, it was a terrible acquisition. But
we will agree to disagree on this one, because we've been fighting this for 10 some years, 50, ever long it's been. So 13
Oh,
years.
let's run a Twitter poll,
Well, yeah.
Was Citrix Hypervisor a great acquisition?
But then you have to
Doug?
understand who you're polling too. If you poll equal business guys, equal marketing guys, equal engineers, then I think you'll get a different thing than if you just poll, let's say, just the engineers that look at it from the engineering side. I'm looking at it from the marketing side, from the business
Well, you
side.
tell me, who follows you on Twitter?
A little bit of everybody and a hell of a lot of bots,
Exactly.
right?
So your answers, in the poll should be pretty good, about the reality.
Yeah. So I don't know. I firmly believe it is. I've stood by this statement for a long time. I think the mistake Citrix made, if I could say one thing, is that Simon Crosby is such a brilliant guy and such a nice guy too. That
Yeah.
and Ian Pratt and those guys, I think they should have probably given him a little bit more say so, and they would have been great innovators and great thought leaders. I don't know if those guys wanted that, right? I don't know the inside story on that, but I think that the talent they got in the brand or the marketing recognition they got from it was worth every cent. I really firmly do.
Well,
I think it was a brilliant acquisition.
That's good.
Yeah.
But Citrix now, how do I see them? Well, I think they're moving in ways, in the right direction in certain ways. Of course, every once in a while they do something that customers don't like, and within reason, like not because they hate Citrix, but some of their decisions have been crazy. Like, for example, I like the approach of, as I said, the flexibility, being agnostic. Like we were just talking about WVD and Citrix Cloud. Being a Citrix customer, I can run my stuff anywhere. I'm not tied to anything. That's awesome. I like that approach. And then Citrix goes and does things like, now the on-prem product cannot broker workloads in the cloud. So they are like forcing you to go to the cloud. And as I said, not everyone is ready right now to go fully to the cloud. And then you could say, well, but then they can stay with the on-prem version. Well, what if I'm on-prem and I want to start evaluating, performance of my workloads in the cloud for now without touching my brokering layer? Otherwise, it would be too many changes in one shot. Well, then I'm screwed. And then you saw, things like the licensing, for example. Now I want to return a license. I want to reallocate. Oh, you can't do that. You have to send us a letter. And then you send them a letter. Oh, no, we can't take this letter because it's not signed by a C-level. And that's the case as of now. So don't you think C-level people have better things to do in life than sending Citrix letters telling them, yes, we're going to, burn our licenses. We're going to return, we're going to whatever. Come on. So, some decisions like that. But overall, as a company, I like the approach they are taking. Let's embrace all technologies. Let's embrace all the clouds. Let's embrace everything. And they have been involving the stack as well. You saw Juan Rivera announcing the general availability of the new web console, for the Citrix Cloud instead of running the traditional studio on HTML5. So they are definitely trying and in ways being successful in modernizing what we know as the bread and butter, right? So I like that on Citrix. That's for sure.
So let's move to VMware. So VMware, come on, they sort of hired like some of the best people in our industry. Some of the, they hired Sean Bass, which, I mean, come on, I think the world of this guy. He's as smart as they come and as nice as they come too. And he definitely understands the complete picture, right? Brian Madden, which, needs no explanation there. Ron Oglesby, another brilliant guy. And of course, they've executed very well over at VMware, right? What do you think of what they're doing in the EUC space? Do they have a chance?
Oh, yes, definitely. They have a ton of customers and customers that for one reason or another, they want to stick to VMware, right? and makes sense. If I'm running everything VMware, then in ways I don't care, like if whatever you are releasing to address my whatever need now is tied completely to me having a VMware infrastructure. I don't care because I already have a VMware infrastructure, like Horizon, for example. If I want to run on-prem, well, I need VMware. I can't run Horizon on Hyper-V or Horizon on anything else, on Nutanix, with AHV. I can't do that. Well, but then, as I said, there is a ton of customers out there that are fully embraced into VMware, and for them, that's fine. And by doing all these acquisitions to fill the gaps they knew they had, well, it's great. So it's not a matter of there is a chance. They already got there. And there is a ton of people, of customers using their platform. So it is successful for sure.
And yeah, I think so too. I mean, really, it's amazing what they've done in such short time frame, comparatively speaking, right? What do you think VMware has, what are their hurdles to catch up with someone, if that's the case, someone like a Citrix?
Looking at EUC in general, it's there, it works. There are things still that are not as polished and as robust as the Citrix offering. One being, for example, the Citrix ADC, the ADC ADM, the whole NetScaler ecosystem. The reality is VMware doesn't have something that can, as of now, compete with that. So that's one problem, or one, it's not necessarily a problem. It's like, it may not be as polished, as powerful, as flexible as the Citrix offering. So that's one. The other thing is, again, it's the reliance on having a full VMware stack. And we both know, coming from this industry, that if I'm hosting applications, I can indeed have a brokering layer, a gateway layer, a provisioning layer, all that stuff that is not connected or tied to a particular stack. One example being like Citrix or Parallels. So is that a problem? As I said, well, yes, for some customers that are not in the full VMware stack and they are like, oh, should we go VMware? Oh, we can't, because if we wanna, it means a whole, like, change everything from the foundation. It's like I want to redo my kitchen, but someone comes and says, listen, well, we have to tear down your whole basement and put a new foundation if you want a new kitchen. So that's VMware's case as of now. But as we just said, there is a ton of customers, of VMware customers. So for them, well, the foundation is already okay. So let's just, redo the kitchen and throw out the old, kitchen and bring in the new VMware kitchen. So I would say that's one of the drawbacks. And sometimes integration about all the stuff they acquired over the years, like the profile stuff and then the application, like app volumes or FinApp. All these things were kind of like, put together quickly and not in the best way possible. But that's part of being a company that was not in the space, and all of a sudden, as you just said, in a couple of years, boom, they went from nothing to being I wouldn't say a leader, but a pretty good, like having a very good offering in this market, like out of the blue, something that took Citrix 20, 30 years to get to a point, and VMware did the same within like 4,
Yeah, I think it's what they've done is amazing.
That's quite an accomplishment.
Yeah, exactly. And it's no disrespect to anybody else. It's just the other thing is that they were able to learn from what other people did too, right? Citrix sort of broke ground as they went along, right? They had to learn as they went along. VMware and anybody else in this field sort of got to say, hey, this is how it's done. And here's a better way to do it because here's some of the pitfalls from the way they did it, right? And it's always easier to come along second and catch up, I think, than it is to be the guy trying to figure out as he goes.
Oh, yeah. No, I agree. If you're smart enough, it's a great thing to be, second, to be third on the market. Because if you are smart, you are watching what the first and second are doing. And you are like, oh, okay, this is not good. This is horrible. What can we do better? So it gives you that chance, to learn about everyone else's mistakes. It's like trying to run a restaurant. What people do first, they go and work for someone, at a restaurant.
Sure.
And then they do everything wrong there. It's not your restaurant, So if you burn, 100 pounds of steak, well, too bad. It's not your steak. But then you learn it. You mastered how to cook steaks. That's exactly what they have done. And the end result is actually great.
Yeah, I agree. I agree totally. You mentioned a lot sort of cloud versus on-prem in some ways, right? You've talked about, the desire, your wish for Microsoft WVD to be on-prem. What is your view on cloud versus on-prem? I guess it all depends, right? But
well, it all depends. But more than that, what I don't like is the way a lot of these, cloud huggers, as I'm calling them, there is the tree huggers and now there's these cloud huggers. And I don't even know how you can hug a cloud, but regardless, these people, they don't understand that they give you that bullshit, that sales bullshit, right? The cloud has unlimited resources, something you would never have on your data center. Well, why I'm trying to create, VMs on Azure and it's telling me it's at capacity? If it has unlimited resources, why I'm being denied my VMs? And the whole thing about resiliency, the cloud is much better. Well, how many issues Azure and AWS and all these clouds had in the past year? Azure had several major issues, And talking about EUC, WVD had major issues as well. To the point I had a customer that couldn't deploy for, a couple days VMs because of an issue on Azure. So again, it's another tool in the toolbox, but it's another tool that has its flaws. That's why I truly believe that as of now, you have to go with a hybrid approach or a multi-cloud approach, because none of these vendors or these solutions are bulletproof.
So if I'm a customer and I say, hey, Claudio, I want to hire you to help us design a infrastructure, and obviously there's so many questions to be asked, but on your behalf, right? But just from a high level, just a conversation, what would you recommend? Let's say they want to do a normal few thousand seats.
Well, here's the deal. It's like building a house, right? If someone comes to you and says, Doug, build me a house, and you go and you ask them, okay, what do you need in the house? And you ask a couple questions and they say, no, just build it. It's a brand new house. And you go and build it. And then at one point they come when the house is built and they're like, oh, we forgot to tell you. But I have this, 10 by 20 by, 7 piece of furniture that has to go in the basement. And you are like, how are you going to put that in the basement? You never told me you had this legacy piece of furniture that had to make into the basement. I was expecting you to have, normal pieces of furniture. So with that, with a design, it's the same thing. There will be customers, new customers, for example, that will come and tell you, listen, we have no legacy baggage to bring anywhere. We are going to do whatever we can in parallel in terms of if there is something legacy, we are going to investigate a solution that is, SaaS, or we are going to port something, or we're going to rewrite something, whatever it is, then we can build this completely in parallel with no dependency on anything that is still lives in my data center or on any systems that are considered like legacy. There is no technical debt to be carried over. Well, in that case, then why not? Why not go to the cloud? If you do it properly, of course, if you monitor things properly, if you shut down, power on things when needed, and so on, it can actually be cost effective. But again, it gets down to what kind of technical debt, what kind of legacy stuff you still have, and how quickly can you get rid of that. So depending on what it is, then a hybrid approach will certainly be the best approach. Even cost-wise, because as we both know, if I need to do a, lift and shift, like get everything that is traditional, that is normal, like regular on-premise stuff, and I just want to move VMs around, go from on-prem to a VM in the cloud that has to run 24/7, well, it's going to cost a lot of money for that, because we're bringing all that legacy stuff that was never built for the cloud into the cloud. So in that case, yeah, take a hybrid approach. But if you can start from scratch, it's tough to justify all the investment and all the resources that you are going to need on-prem to start with. But again, if you are starting from scratch, it's like you're building a new company. You're going to hire people. You're going to, build new systems and all that stuff. Well, then certainly it's worth investigating going all into the cloud. But I think you agree on that.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%, 100%, totally. Okay, so let's move to the area that's very close to my heart, the edge, right? And we talked a lot about, deploying the applications, the back end, all that stuff. But we have these clients out there, and a lot have changed since both you and I and a lot of us have got, or even people 5 years ago, got into this industry. Where do you see, or what do you think about the edge, the endpoints today? I'll just high level.
Well, I think it's a critical component that for years and to this day, all these vendors, these major vendors, are completely missing. It's for me, it's almost it's borderline insane if you think that I'm, as a company, let's say Citrix or even WVD, with Microsoft, or VMware with Horizon. What are these people doing? Well, they are allowing users to run whatever they need from a central location. From, it doesn't matter where it is, doesn't matter the vendor, but I don't have anything locally on my laptop. I just got this brand new laptop. I sign up to like Workspace ONE, and boom, I have access to all my apps remotely. One example. That said, having zero visibility, and I don't mean visibility in terms of knowing what you, Doug, as a user, what are you doing? Which cool German websites are you browsing at night? I don't mean that. I don't care about that. But what I care is, how is your machine behaving that potentially may be impacting what I'm presenting to you remotely? Because it's very easy to blame, something is not working, and very hard trying to understand what is going on if I don't have any visibility on the endpoint, for example. And I never understood that. So for me, it's a critical piece of any, application, virtualization application, deployment solution. I need to have visibility on the endpoint. I have to control the endpoint better in certain cases. Exactly what IGL is doing in many ways.
Yeah.
And one thing that I never understood is, it's like having a Trojan horse, right? Citrix had the Trojan horse for years. And what I mean by that, I mean what is needed if I want to run Citrix applications. I need a damn Citrix client, Citrix workspace, whatever you want to call, whatever Citrix calls it. If I'm already installing that on the endpoints, why they were never bringing metrics from the endpoints into, for example, director? So I can correlate a performance issue on a particular application to the fact a user has, like my wife does all the time and pisses me off because she complains. She keeps like 30 freaking Google Chrome tabs open.
My wife has literally about 150 tabs open. No joke.
Yeah. And then she comes to me, the computer, is slow.
But she runs a browser plugin that actually, or extension, whatever they call them, that actually puts it in the background and doesn't. It's amazing, but she does it, and every time I see it, it just makes me cringe. But her machine runs fine. It's remarkable.
Yeah, but that's just one example.
Yeah, I know. I just have to. Anytime someone brings up tabs, I have to say it because someone, you see this. A techie sees 150 tabs open. First of all, she can't even see all the tabs. She uses the shortcut to bring up a drop down list of all the tabs, and I'm just like, why don't you just do that with shortcuts?
I can bet there are tabs.
Oh, I digress.
Yeah, there are tabs on her browser. I can bet that already had their birthdays.
Yeah. She actually uses them. It's everything she does is a cloud based. SaaS based, almost everything. I think everything she does is SaaS based. Anyway. We digress.
It's crazy. So having the endpoint visibility is critical. It's critical. Knowing what's going on and where it makes sense, offloading stuff to the endpoint. Like what you guys are doing. Like, well, if I have an endpoint and I'm doing Microsoft Teams, why do I need to run the whole Microsoft Teams, as an example, on my remote solution? I don't. But on the other hand, if I'm going to dump into the endpoint, I need to have controls. I need to understand what is there. I need to control versions, for example. I need to be able to deploy. I need to be able to install and uninstall, that kind of stuff. So for me, it's a critical piece. And that said, it is one piece that is on my desktop as a service book. So it's not only about desktop as a service, looking at all the solutions, but also looking at things like my endpoints. What do I need to understand about endpoints? So yes, it is a critical piece of the puzzle that is often, left alone. And it's a mistake in my mind.
I agree with that. I think that, the thing about, let's just let's not pick on Citrix, but let's just use the word Citrix, right? Forever we've said, hey, here's this great return on investment, total cost of ownership, this, easeability, this management, but we've put the receiver on the endpoint, or in the early days, the ICA client and the endpoint, but we didn't change the device itself, right? So we still had to manage that device itself. So other than, we can bring these apps down there or, present them, we still have to manage that device. But yet we had this solution to where if it was fully implemented, you don't need that device. Or maybe you need just a few apps on that device, right? So that always irked me. The problem was I think in the early days is that the thin clients, for lack of a better term, although that's exactly what they were, right, weren't adequate for the job, right? I mean, maybe they were slow. I like describing them sort of slow and chunky and poor management. I think today IGEL's one of them. There's a few others probably, right? I don't want to be completely biased here. I will. IGEL's the best. I think you can do that nowadays where you couldn't in the early days. What do you think about that?
Oh, I agree. Definitely. Like, the reality is for many, many years, and you remember that, they were after reducing cost on the endpoint. That was the big thing. They were like, okay, we need endpoints that cost, $99. And with that, what, the solution was, well, let's cut costs. and got to a point that it was literally the bare bones, like minimum, to get you to your applications, to your published desktop, whatever it is. But it was barely cutting it, to the point that the whole premises that you would get a thin client and it would last 5, 6 years. It was completely, bogus, like marketing bullshit. Because the protocols got better, then they realized that, well, to
That's
do
not
certain
true. That's
things
not true,
like,
Claudio. We have many customers. It's actually, one of the I wouldn't say a problem, but I mean, you always want to upsell a customer, right? I mean, so that's sort of from the sales side. But I can speak about iGel, right? I can't speak about Dell or Weiss or Dell Wise or HP or the others. But within iGel, if you have a client that's 5 years old, we can flash you a new firmware. You can download the latest operating system, and it has updates. So
my
you
point
can
is,
get the latest.
I don't mean that in general. What I mean is, if you actually built a proper thin client hardware-wise, decent, something decent. It's like building a laptop in a certain way. Like I'm looking here on my table, I have this Dell XPS 13. It is a 9350, I think, model. So a couple years old, 4 years old. It still runs beautifully because it was built as a robust, a decent machine 4 years ago. So when you build a thin client, you have two ways of doing it. You can build a decent thin client, or you can go, as I said, the cheapest way. And the point being, if you get, for example, something that was built, as an example, on a Raspberry Pi of 3-4 years ago, I can bet that device does not perform as it's needed today, for example, with one example being Microsoft Teams. If I'm doing all this redirection and so on, I can bet a Pi Zero board of, years ago can't take it with the proper performance, the expected performance by your users.
But
as you said, if iGel built something decent 4 years ago, I can't see why that thin client wouldn't work well today. Unless something changes drastically, like Teams requires now, 8 cores to run. Well, then it's a different story. Then if you want to offload that, of course, you need the horsepower on the endpoint to do it. But again, it was all about how you build these things. If you build something solid, yes, you can get that 4-year guy, load with the latest and greatest OS, and that's it. And the other point is there are vendors like iGel that care about that. They care about what else can we do for this, I wouldn't call legacy, but, for this discontinued hardware. How can we keep them going? How can we optimize them to make it better? Right? And then that allows you to get a 4-year-old thin client and still run with the latest and greatest OS that iGel has, is still with decent performance. It's exactly the opposite of something like Apple. Every time a new iPhone comes out, they actually, that they were doing things to make the older phones slower. So people would go, instead of optimizing the phones to keep going, no, it was exactly the opposite. Like, okay, what can we do to make it slower? So we make people get rid of the old iPhone, 10, whatever, and buy the new 12. And like Apple, there were thin client vendors doing the same. There was no technical reason why certain thin client models from other vendors could not take, for example, a newer, more optimized version of a particular OS they were running. But for them, it was like, no, we can tell customers buy the new whatever, the new Wise model, instead of really, doing something for the customers. Keep the whole infrastructure, the whole endpoint investment they made going. And that's something I like on Agile. You guys don't forget the older stuff.
Well, we don't think about hardware. We think about the software, right? And of course, you want to make the software as good as it possibly can be, and
as optimized as possible.
Yeah, and that software. So of course, it runs on, older hardware. But that's how at Agile, that's how we think. We obviously care about hardware. We sell hardware, right?
Yeah.
But we don't focus on the hardware. We focus on the software so that we can put it on older machines, newer machines, Dell machines, HP machines, laptops, you name it, right? And yeah, absolutely. Well, very good, very good. Claudio, we've talked a long time, so I don't know. I mean, we could talk forever. Is there anything specific you would like to bring up?
Oh, not really. I think we talked about several things. I just want to make sure people understand that I'm no hater. That I don't hate
No.
People in the industry, or that I don't hate company. I just say certain things that sometimes people take these things personal. But as we discussed at the beginning, the message, if you remove whatever layer that may not make you happy, that may piss you off for whatever reason, the language or the way it was said, the reality is, if you peel these layers, you are gonna see there is truth behind what I sell, or behind what I say. I'm not there to bullshit you. Not to pick on something and just make you look bad. It's like there is truth behind that, and there is honesty behind that.
You got it. You're not bashing, or you don't bash people. You just speak your personal opinion. And of course, some people disagree with that. Some people take offense to that. Some people love it, but you're willing and you're free to actually express what you believe in a world today where that's sometimes not the easiest thing to do or the politically correct thing to do. There's a lot of folks that have a lot of respect for you for doing that. There's other folks that think that you're not that wise to do that, right? And there's other people that wish they could do that. I've sort of fallen all the camps. It depends on what you say, right? But definitely on the I think we need people like you, Claudio. And then of course you got to be smart enough as the listener to look at what someone says and say, hey, do I agree with this? Does this work in my environment, in my way of living, in my way of thinking, right? And not just taking anything you hear, no matter if it's good, bad, or the ugly, right, as gospel. And I guess that's what, in many ways, what you're trying to say too, right?
Exactly. Like, as I said, like if I'm talking about a product, I'm not, or I'm not ever talking about the product in a way to bash it. I'm just trying to show you, listen, there are issues. This is, your list of problems. Go and make it better. I'm telling you what is wrong. Go and make it better. If I said, this is shit, or this could be better, it's the same thing at the end of the day. There is work to be done, and you know where you have to work on.
I love it. Hey, Claudio, thank you so much for taking the time to coming on the show and sort of standing up and tell us what you believe, right? And this is really, like I said, it's refreshing and it's interesting. You learn a lot, and I hope the folks listening will take what Claudio says and think deeply about it and think, hey, when we deploy something, is this the right solution? I tell you, when I left the consulting business, when I joined Citrix as an employee, I swore to myself, because I was such an engineer at heart, right? Or at least I wanted to be, and said, I want to remain independent. And Brian used to always say that we're independent. I tell Brian, we always have a master. Don't fool yourself. But you can try to be, right? You can try to say, is this what's best? Of course, you have a tool bag, and you have to use the tools within that tool bag. That's sort of the, we can't all just pick and choose what we want. It doesn't work that way too. But try to be honest. Try to be honest with yourself. So it's always tell my kids, the one thing you can do is you can do anything in life. Don't lie to yourself, because you know better. Right?
Yeah. Be honest with with yourself and with your customers. That's the lesson here.
Yeah. I love it. Hey, Claudia, thank you so much. I can't wait to see you again in person. I owe you a beer, many beers. And today's E2E day, or the start of E2E. Real sad because I would have flown down to Athens for this, but nobody's flying anywhere right now, or at least they shouldn't be. So hopefully next year, sometime, maybe in the summer, fall, I'll see you again.
Probably.
I hope so. It's been
definitely.
It's been the strangest. This is so cliche, but people say it's so horrible. It's not horrible. War is horrible. There's many different things that are horrible. Now, if you're dying, that's horrible. But for me, I've got to sit at home and play with my computers and hang out with my wife. That's not horrible. But missing my friends is definitely sad. So I miss you, buddy.
For me as well. Like, staying at home every single day, and all I do is I go do the groceries and I go pick up my son at school.
Yeah,
I love doing that, but every single day doing that for the past year and nothing else, well, that's a problem.
It gets a little bit old, but it could be much worse. So on that note, again, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I hope you have thank you. I'll see you again soon.
Oh, thank you, Doug. It was definitely fun.
Yeah, it's always fun chatting with you, Claudio. Okay, take care.
Mate. You too.
Okay, so that concludes another successful episode of DABCC Radio. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. I hope you learned something from Claudio. Maybe me too. I argued with him a little bit. I played the devil's advocate, and sometimes I agree with him, sometimes I don't. I don't agree with everyone, and neither does he. Neither should you. That's sort of the point. Figure out, and this is what he's trying to tell you, I think, and I know, and that is to make up your own minds. Find out what's best for the customer in that particular moment. One solution does not fit all. Not everybody's right all the time, especially me. I'm wrong more than I'm right. So, what a joy to have him on. He's a great guy. If you ever get a chance to definitely read his blog, if you ever get a chance to see him in person again, definitely don't miss that. He's wonderful. And you put him and Alex Cooper in the same room and on the same stage and talk about fun. There's nobody better than those two. Alex is second to none. I mean, he's as good as they come. So, what do I say? So, hope you enjoyed it. I'm posting this the Monday after Thanksgiving. I hope you guys enjoyed Thanksgiving. If you're American, if not, I hope you took a little bit of time just to be thankful. I hope every day you take time to be thankful. I'm thankful for all you. I'm thankful for so many things. I mean, I'm so far beyond where I ever wanted to be and ever expected to be and ever needed to be. And not that I'm some superstar, far from it. It's just I'm lucky, right? We're all lucky. We have good jobs. We're healthy for the most part, I hope. And life can't be that bad. It really can't. If you think about where we are as a civilization, we're better than we've ever been. Yeah, there's problems out there. There's always been problems out there. But we lived longer than we've ever lived. We're healthier. We're peaceful, more peaceful than we've ever been in society. And it's a great time to live. And it's a great, what do I say? So I'm very, very lucky. I have a great wife, great kids, great parents, great friends, and I just want to see them all again. So I see some of them, but not all enough of them. So, and I definitely want to see my friends. I want to see you guys too. So I know you do too, right? Not that you want to see me, but you want to see the same. Anyway, I'm rambling. I had fun talking to Claudio. He's just such a great guy. So on that note, happy holidays. It is the holiday season now, and on Saturday, my wife and I put up the Christmas tree, and I actually made the holiday Crispin, Christmas beginning. And in Germany, you tend not to put the Christmas tree up until the day before Christmas. And I said, that's ridiculous. You need to put it up right at the beginning of the season, because then you can enjoy it. You get the festiveness. You put up the decorations, the tinsel, all this stuff, the Santas, what have you. And you just go big and you have fun. Isn't that such an American way of saying it? But it's true. And it's great. It's fun. So we have our tree up. We have all the windows lined with, this tinsel stuff. And we have lights on the balcony. And Yeah, it's cool. I think I freaked her out a bit, but that's okay. We're going to get the holiday spirit. We played holiday music. I even bought us both matching pajamas. Yes, I've gone that far. This is true. This is what she has to put up with, being married to me. We wore matching pajamas all weekend. But they weren't ugly, believe it or not. I was going to make them that, but I figured it was bad enough that they were matching. So, and they're American. So if the difference between American clothes and European clothes is European clothes tend to be better fit, and American clothes tend to be baggier. And I personally like the baggier. It's more comfortable, especially when you're talking about pajamas, right? You want something really soft fabric, a little bit baggy, comfortable. The Europeans don't like that, per se. Not everyone, of course, and my wife being one of them. It's like, but they don't look that good. I'm like, well, you're inside. You've got a blanket over you. But I don't need a blanket. They're nice and warm. I was like, exactly. Yeah, welcome to my weekend. So, happy holidays to y'all, and I hope you have a great, holiday season, whatever they may be. I'm going to. So, and I hope to see you in 2021. Boy, that sounds weird. Okay, take care, everybody, and thank you for listening to DABCC Radio.
CC?
DABC.
Say it again. DABCC.
DABC.
Can you say it again? DABCC.
DABC.
How about DABCC?
DABC.
DABCC.
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 DABCC.